Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and I want to welcome Peter Jones here to the channel tonight.
Hello.
This is episode number 2 in our series where we look at different years and we pick our top 10 favorite tracks from that year. Now, I was telling Peter before we started that my list, this is what my list is today. Tomorrow it could change, and all these tracks. And I was asking, well, did you number yours in a certain order? And he did, but mine, I think I'm just going to go down the way I compiled them. I don't know if it really matters because all these songs are great. Now, I'm going to be interested, Peter, in your list because, you know, last time you pretty much went by the Billboard chart and I kind of cheated and I just went all over and just picked tracks. That's what I did with this one, too. What did you
I did as well.
Okay.
I did as well.
I mean, the Billboard tracks are fine. I love that idea, but there are so many other tracks that we could mention that, you know, I say we, open it up to the whole 1971. So last time we did 1970, tonight we are doing 1971. So we might as well get this dog going. So Peter, why don't you start off with your number 10?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Oh, this is going to be a fun. Oh, I just can't.
Yeah.
I'm only imagining as we go. We'll be doing this forever, you know.
Our list may change before the end of this show.
Well, I could, like I said, I told you this is very difficult to even do.
It is, but the discipline of it is great, and I think the biggest joy for me is the refamiliarity with so many of these songs that maybe I haven't heard in quite a while, and just remembering how much I've loved them and how they've really stood the test of time. And it's just a really good, praiseworthy adventure as to how great 1970 and now 71 was for music. Now, so my first pick is, I had mentioned in the last episode that I had really started to get into horn bands, and so my first pick is by the band Chase, their debut album Chase, and the song "Get It On." When I first heard this explode on the radio, I had never heard something with horns that heavy. Clearly I was into Chicago and everything else, but this was driving at a pace that I just hadn't heard before. And the combination of strong, heavy vocals and the soaring brass on this was just such a great combination. And every time I hear it now, it's just such a great reminder of what I loved about it. This will always be a song that I will absolutely just stop what I'm doing and listen to it when it comes on or when I hear it. And I do put it on every once in a while just because I want to hear that driving horn section, especially in the choruses. So that's my first track, "Get It On" by the band Chase from their debut album, Chase.
Wow, that's good. Is that the album? I'm trying to think of the album cover, but it almost has them like...
They're all kind of...
Yeah,
they're kind of... It's like a street thing, and they're all kind of walking over each other, and there's like a swoosh of color on the top and then a swoosh of color on the... It's powerful stuff.
I didn't realize that came out in 71.
Yeah.
Holy mackerel.
When this showed up on the album list, I'm like, there it is.
Obviously, I didn't pick anything from them.
That's okay.
Well, I mean, there was a lot going on in 1971. You know, it's probably one of the best years ever for new music, you know.
I agree.
And you'll never see days like that anymore. Sure, they're putting out new stuff, but it's not like it was. This was the golden era. Those early 70s just were like magic. And then speaking of magic, my first choice comes from 1971. The last album with Jim Morrison, which is L.A. Woman, but my track off of L.A. Woman is Riders of the Storm that ends that whole record. You know, starts out with a thunderstorm, Ray Manzarek's, cascading keyboard line. I guess that's a Fender Rhodes, I think.
It
But
is a Fender Rhodes. Yep.
yeah, but just infectious. And of course, Ray's a great player. Morrison his crooning on here sounds great. It has that sense of isolation, impending death. It's just
Absolutely.
I don't know. It's dark. And what a way to end a record. Of course, the Doors did put out 2 more records after this, but without Jim Morrison, they just could not. Well, what are you going? You can't compete. You can't come back after losing Jim Morrison. But I think that's one of the great tracks from 1971. It's just, yeah, it's haunting, sense of loss, desolation. What can I say? It's just a great. And it was also a single. It was actually the second single off the record, too. Not that I was planning to look for singles or anything. I'm just, whatever. I'm just going with tracks. But
just
yeah.
a stunning track.
I would have to say, Peter, that's probably one of my all-time favorite Doors tracks.
Well, it is my favorite Doors track. And in fact, it was going to be my next choice.
Oh,
so I'm going to.
Well, no, that's fine because we're going to have some. Obviously, we're probably going to have some overlap, but that's fine. That just goes to show you how great these songs are.
So I am going to switch my list, and I'm going to replace it with something else because you've already covered it. And holy smokes, what a great song! And you've got to go on YouTube and watch Ray Manzarek explain how he wrote it and how he played it. And it's just absolutely amazing. Well, my next track then I will replace with one of my many honorable mentions. This track from one of the most popular albums of all time, one of the biggest selling female artists, from the monster album Tapestry. I have to go with Carole King and pull up It's Too Late.
Damn it, Peter.
Are we picking each other's lists here?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Holy
But that's
smokes.
fine. That's funny. That's great.
There's so many great tracks on this record. And talking about kind of moody in the verses on this with that such subtle piano underneath. And then a nice, very, very melodic, sweeping chorus on there. It's my favorite track on the record, and is probably my favorite Carole King song.
I would have to agree.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with It's Too Late from the Must Own. If you're out there and you don't own Tapestry, that's your next purchase, folks.
Everybody should have that record. The thing is, her being such a brilliant songwriter, none of the albums that she did after that, she was never. It's like she captured lightning in a bottle on Tapestry. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying her other albums aren't great, but I mean, obviously this sold a boatload. It got great reviews. I don't know. It was probably the biggest selling record of 1971. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, pretty close.
Looking that up, but I bet charts just for giggles.
Probably Zeppelin 4 may have sold more.
Yeah. Well, the record,
but maybe not in 71.
Yeah.
It's sold more, I think, to date. But
but it's a great track. Oh my God.
Amazing. Mm-hmm. That's my second pick.
That's excellent. Well, I might as well jump on the back of that because I did choose that track, but I'm going to choose another one off of Tapestry because it's so brilliant. And I'm going to go with You Got a Friend. Like Peter, a lot of these could just be interchanged,
Right.
But this was written in 1971 during the recording sessions for Tapestry and James Taylor's album Mudslide Slim. She actually said, I'm here's a little snippet. She said the song wrote itself. It was written by something outside myself through me. That's amazing. It's like one of
Channeling.
those things, you've heard like interviews with Bob Dylan, and they, Bob Bradley on 60 Minutes is going to Bob, and where did those songs come from? And Bob's going, I don't know. I don't know who wrote them.
They just channel.
This is like one of those songs. It wrote itself and it just
Right.
presented itself, and it was, well, it's a wonderful track. I mean,
Great song.
My God, what can I say about it? It's just wonderful songwriting. Of course, Carole King and Gary Geffen, they did a lot of great stuff. Pleasant Valley Sunday, they wrote a lot of stuff in the 60s. They were in
Right.
that whole Brill building scene where they were just cranking out tracks. And she's just an absolutely brilliant songwriter. And I just think I had to include something off of Tapestry because it's, well, just that good. So now we have 2 tracks, Peter, off of Tapestry.
Outstanding.
Well, I'll go that's my number 9, even though I'm not really numbering these.
No, that's excellent.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
So what do you got? What's next for you, my friend?
This next one, even though I exposed everything to the widest range I could, I did kind of intentionally do a mix of ones that influenced me as a drummer and as a musician versus more pop oriented songs that I absolutely fell in love with. So my first one was one I loved as a drummer. The Carole King was what I loved as a melody and as a composition. So this one goes definitely into my drumming and music influences. We recently did a show where we mentioned what our favorite live album, if our favorite live album was our favorite album from that band. And it was in this case, but this is the studio album that followed. This is from the mighty Who's Next. And now, how in the world do you pick one song off of Who's Next? But for me, it's always been a rather easy choice. I have to go with the stunning composition, Bargain.
Oh.
I think this is probably my favorite Who song of all time. Keith Moon is no drummer since has ever been that busy on a pop song. And it is kind of a pop song. He is so active. He's playing crazy fills all over the place. And especially when they get to the end section, he's just basically playing a drum solo as an outro while the band is riffing over the top of him. It's just so stunning. Great melody. Well, of course, the production on this is just absolutely flawless. And I just think it's perfectly composed. It's perfectly played. And no offense, but it's not We Won't Get Fooled Again, and it's not Bob O'Reilly, which I love and I've played a zillion times live. This one is kind of the one that maybe doesn't get talked about as much, and it's clearly my favorite Who song. So Bargain from Who's Next.
I think that's a good choice. You could pick damn near anything from that record, and well, it's brilliant. You mentioned the Who being a pop band to some degree. They are basically a power pop band. Some people are gonna, if I had Stephen Schnee on here, you may disagree. There are power pop elements in the Who, and I think a lot of that power pop came from that era. You could look at the Raspberries. They were totally influenced by the Who and tried to some degree mimic what they did, and they were influenced by them.
They were mods.
But yes, they were a pop band. I know some people are going to go, "Oh, Grant, don't be silly. You bet. That is a pop song, and that's still in the same vein as Substitute and all that stuff."
Right.
You remember Face? I know we're going on a tangent, but I just wanted to say a lot of people are very critical of Face dances. But I listen to Face dances and going, "Well, it's Pete It's the Who doing what they always used to do.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Don't let go of the coat. There's nothing different between that song and what they were doing in 1966,
The only thing that changed is they got louder.
Right.
They got louder.
Right.
But and they got more aggressive. Yeah. And they did that within the blues elements that were part of their genesis as well.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, Heaven and Hell, and like we said, Substitute, and, you know, My Generation, Magic Bus, these are pop songs.
Right. Oh, yeah. That's all they are.
I agree completely.
Great pop songs, great power pop songs. I'll leave it at that. But that's a great choice. I love it. All right. Well, as everyone knows that I've talked about this a bazillion times, that my gateway drug into this whole mess. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for me getting turned on to the Beatles when I was 10. So at that time, I was also turned on to the Beatles. I also was taking in all I could take in of the band members' solo records and stuff like that. So we're going back to 1971, and I have to admit the most Beatle-like solo record, or 45, or single came from 1971, and it would have to be Paul McCartney and Linda McCartney, Uncle Albert, and Admiral Halsey, which when I heard it, there is virtually not much difference between that than something off of Abbey Road. Now, someone may go, oh, well, Grant, come on. Can't compare it to that, but it's brilliant. It was released August 2nd, 1971. But it was like one of the first big solo singles. You know, this is all really, I mean, I think it went up to, Billboard ranked it as number 22 in its top pop singles in 1971.
Right.
And it was Paul's first gold record after the breakup of the Beatles. Because if you remember, during that whole era, you know, Rolling Stone was out to get him, and for some reason they were all worked up over John Lennon, and it was great that Paul was able to get a single after all the bad publicity. You know, Rolling Stone was blaming him for the breakup. Well, that's a whole other show, but a great single nevertheless. And when I was a kid and I would hear it, it's just absolutely infectious. One of the great singles in 1971, I would have to admit.
Absolutely.
I don't know. Paul doing what Paul does best.
Oh, stunning track.
Stunning track. And what can I say? That's my next one. What's your next one?
The next one is another one that has influenced me intensely, and is relevant because you were just talking about this the other day. I had heard a different song from this album and clearly fell in love with it right away. But it wasn't until I all of a sudden grabbed the album and heard this track that this is one of those before and after moments. And the album is Fragile. And the song I had first heard was Roundabout. But that's not what I'm picking. I'm picking Heart of the I could have. I'm picking Heart of the Sunrise.
Oh, John Anderson.
Holy smokes, did this change how I viewed and how I played music and how I thought about music. The musicianship, the compositions, the huge breadth of creativity and stylistic movements from one part to the next just absolutely seared right through me. And part of it is that, you know, later on, of course, Roundabout's a little bit overplayed, still doesn't diminish the track by any measure, but boy, there's something about Heart of the Sunrise and the vocals. Everything was just so moving and inspirational and motivating, and it's my go-to track on the album, and I can never get too much of Heart of the Sunrise. So that's my next choice.
And again, you could pick anything off of that record, really.
Right.
You know what? Right. Another thing, because I did pick one, but I'm not going to mention it yet. But it's from a different album from 1971 from Yes. But think about this, Peter Jones. The fact that Yes could put two brilliant albums out in the same year.
Yeah, we're not talking one really good and one kind of marginal or two
we're-
average ones.
No. We're talking two great albums in 1971. 1971 is a great year. It's a hard one to pick.
Yes.
Stuff. Well, my next one, I'm going to go, well, we were talking the Beatles. We're going to talk someone else in that kind of genre. It's not a Beatle thing, but we're going to talk the Beach Boys and the track Surf's Up. Now you're probably going to go, well, Grant, Surf's Up was recorded late 66 for the Smile album. It was, and a lot of it they used on this. They wiped Brian's vocals out and Carl sings it, but they used a lot of the same track, but they finished it up in 1971. Was it a leftover from something of a great previous era? Yes, but it's still one of Brian Wilson's greatest masterpieces. What can I say? It's creative. It's got Van Dyke Park's lyrics. It's just an absolute mammoth of a song, one of Brian's best things he ever produced. And it's funny because I don't think that the Surf's Up version, because this album was on the album Surf's Up from 1971, I should say that. So, but the track's on there, and I don't think this version takes away anything from the versions that came out in, the Smile box set or anything. I think it's just as strong, and I think Carl sounds great on it. I'm not sure what the story, if Davy probably would know, but I'm not sure why we wiped Brian's vocals and we used Carl on it. I don't know. But either way, either version is absolutely stunning. So I would highly recommend it. And if you're just talking about 1971, holy crap. Thank God this track finally got released in 1971. Of course, think about it, Peter. No one in 1971 probably even heard it. Unless you were in that Beach Boys circle back in the day, it was forgotten. But the fact that, they had enough. Carl's one that probably rescued it from the depths of obscurity. But I applaud him for that. But it's a great version. Check it out.
Excellent.
Highly recommended. How could I not put it on here? So
excellent.
Yeah, I love it.
Excellent.
All right, throwing it over to you, sir.
All right, the next one follows in the same vein as my previous. When I heard this, I thought I had kind of experienced as much kind of shock and new creativity. But no, there was more to be had. And when this sidelong epic came out, absolutely just took me over. Emerson, Lake and Palmer's Tarkus. Holy smokes, do I love this track.
Yeah, I like the whole record.
Of course, my go-to is the live version on Welcome Back, My Friends. Mm-hmm. But when I heard this, I had never heard anything this complex, this so technically driven by players who were so skilled and such masters of their instruments. A lot of it in 71, I'm sure went way over my young head. And it wasn't until later with continuous revisits and sitting down at the drums and trying to figure out what that was and this was and how did they do that and what's the timing on that and how the hell did he play that and those types of things, that all of a sudden things started to make sense and it just became this epic. And to me, it's just simply one of the great progressive tracks of all time.
Well, how did you ever? That's one of the records that I never. You heard a lot of the other tracks, not so much anything off of Tarkus. How did you even come into What was your entryway to in hearing
My
that track?
sister, as I mentioned in other shows, I have two older sisters, 3 and 6 years, who are both huge music lovers. My oldest, well, actually my second, obtained the debut and was a huge fan of Lucky Man.
Mm-hmm.
She got the record thinking that most of it was going to be like Lucky Man, and of course it isn't,
No, it's not.
which is an understatement. But she was like, "Do you want to give this a try?" I'm like, "Okay." And I just absolutely fell in love with it. So as soon as Tarkus became available,
Gotcha.
grabbed it up, put the opening track on, and was like, "That's not Lucky Man either." And I thought, holy smokes, what did I just fall into here? And it became an obsession that has never left me. ELP's always going to be one of my favorite bands of all time. And this track is just the go-to track for me. It's just absolutely stunning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't hear that album until much later. I don't know why. I can't explain it. But none of my friends were really playing that. You know, I didn't have any older siblings or anything like that. Everything that I was able to listen to just kind of, I mean, I knew Emerson, Lake and Palmer, but that was one of those records that just kind of eluded me. I don't know. I think it's great. Don't get me wrong.
I
was just curious how that.
I'm always forever grateful for my older sisters for a lot of reasons, but clearly the fact that I was able to be exposed to almost an entire decade of music way before my age would have normally allowed me to be. And that is just such a fortuitous place to be. And it made such a huge permanent mark on me. And they have a lot of part in that. So
that's wonderful. Hey, great choice. I wasn't expecting anything like that. So, hey, this is wonderful. All right. My next one is, well, I would say this is probably her best album. And it was written after she broke up with Graham Nash. Evidently, if you go out with Graham Nash and you break up, you can write a hell of an album, you know? So the track is Joni Mitchell's Case of You, which is on the Blue album from 1971. Of course, we're talking 1971, kids. Called Dulcimer on it. It's very sparse. The whole record's very sparse. You know, Joni playing guitar, singing, playing dulcimer. What can I say? It's very stripped down and it's very intimate sounding. But that song, Case of You, the emotion, the lyrics, I mean, she has "Oh Canada" in there for crying out loud. I think it's the best track of the album, and probably some people would probably argue with me. And you know, there's probably the whole record's like a
the whole record.
The whole record. That by far is her best record, I think. But to me, that is, God, that has to be like probably my favorite from 1971, or it's darn close. But I don't know. The Case of You, highly recommend it. I mean, and you can just turn it on, put it on your stereo, and just crank it up, and it just sounds wonderful.
I would have never been exposed to her in real time had it not been for my sisters. My oldest was was a Joni Mitchell deep fan. So Joni was on in our house as soon as she started recording stuff. Because let's see, I was 71. I was 9, so that would make her 15. That and that's a prime musical influential time. You're
soaking everything up.
Yeah, and she was absolutely into that. And then the sister just below that, who's older than me, was taking the 3-year that were below her. So, I mean, I had it all covered.
Yeah, you were lucky.
It's such a great album, such a stunning artist. And the sparsity and the space between the tracks and the instrumentation is a real lesson for a lot of musicians, that you don't have to have this wall of sound. If that's your goal, okay, but you can leave room. You can let things breathe. You can have space, and it actually makes it sound bigger.
Well, think about this. On this track, you've got James Taylor playing guitar, Russ Kunkel playing drums, Joni's playing dulcimer, guitar, and vocals. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of space around everything, you know?
Yeah.
And it just sounds, even though it's just minimal instrumentation, it just sounds so big.
Yeah,
of course,
it does.
Joni, what can you say about Joni Mitchell? I mean, she's just incredible. Incredible songwriter, incredible person. All right, man. I knew if we're going to do 1971, this, I didn't even have to think about that. I knew A Case of You was on it. So I would highly recommend anybody check it out. It's absolutely infectious. All right, Peter, what's next?
This one is very unusual for me. Anybody who knows my history, I am typically not a fan of this band. That's not to say I don't like them. Those are two different things. I don't seek them out. I don't buy their albums. But when I hear them, I either like the song or I don't like the song. And I've even played way more than my share of their songs in cover bands that I've been in all over the decades. A good handful of them, in fact. I'm talking about the Rolling Stones.
Oh.
And I'm going to a track that is, without question, by far my favorite Stones track. And I think this is simply one of the greatest songs of the decade, and maybe one of that year, and maybe one of the best of the decade. Excuse me. And that's the song Bitch. I absolutely freaking love this song.
Great track.
Again, there's more horns. The rhythm is driving on it. It is one of their most intense riffs. I think Jagger on this is just on fire. I love Charlie's drumming on it. It's just a fully formed, perfect, powerful pop composition. And to me, it's kind of an enigma because I didn't hear very much that was similar to this at the time. We were playing, Brown Sugar. We were playing Get Off My Cloud. We were playing Jumping Jack Flash in cover bands. We couldn't do this because none of us knew any horn players, in junior high and early high school who wanted to play it. But when I heard this, it just was so immediate and made such an impact. And I'm like, if I'm in a mood and I want to hear this is the song I'll go pull up, and I'm in it and I'm just jamming away. And I'm like, it's my favorite Stones tune. So Bitch from Sticky Fingers by the Rolling Stones.
Holy crap. Yeah. Well, you could have picked, I keep saying this. You could have picked a lot from that record anyway.
Right.
But you think about all these tracks, you pick these album tracks. Oh my God. 1971 was just absolutely amazing. You'll never see that ever again. You'll never see that. So sad, but you know what's great? At least we still have the music here. So
right.
Yeah, it's great. All right, my next one. You're probably not thinking I'd pick something like this. I'm not. Now I'm gonna sound like you, but I'm picking a song that's got yodeling on it and Appalachian beatboxing and Hammond organ, fuzzy guitars. I'm talking Hocus Pocus by Focus.
Absolutely.
Yes, why not? It hit number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100. And if you think about it, I keep thinking Shocking Blue, they had a hit. But here we've got yet another Dutch band on the charts in the States. which kind of weird. But is Hocus Pocus a novelty song? Because if you listen to that whole record, that album, Hocus Pocus is really the only thing that sounds like that.
Right.
You know,
complete anomaly.
A complete anomaly. Why was it I don't understand how this even got plucked from the album to be a single or a hit. But I mean, the whole record's good. I can recommend the whole record. But you would never think that a song with yodeling would have hit number 9 on the Billboard chart. But it's infectious. They used to play this on FM rock radio all the time. Do we hear it now? No, you don't hear any Focus anymore. I think Focus is pretty much Focus. Who's that? You know,
right?
Used to be something you hear all the time.
Oh, I have to think that song influenced just so many bands.
Oh my God!
It is so heavy. Oh my God,
it's heavy. Riff. Yes. That organ part, holy crap. You know, you've got those jazzy drum solos. You've got...
It's got everything.
But if you think about it, you're thinking 1971. Holy crap, and this was a hit? This just goes to show you, though, back in the early 70s, there'd be all kinds of different type of acts and artists that could get hits. You know,
well, this might be the perfect time for the quote from Greg Lake.
Go ahead.
Like, he used to say when they were talking to him later in his career and they asked him about the music business, and he said, well, everything has gone the opposite direction. When we came out, our sole goal was to not sound like somebody else. That was the purpose, to be ourselves, but to not sound like anybody else. It was a badge of honor to not sound like somebody else.
Wow.
Where today, everything sounds like everything else.
That's because, well, back then they were playing real instruments. I'm not saying people aren't doing it now, but I'm not a studio guy, but I've watched enough of, YouTube stuff. But you say, well, I want this, I want to sound like a Hammond organ. I want to sound like John Lord. Okay, well, we can put that patch in or whatever. So
that's preset number 6.
Preset number 6, so everybody sounds the same.
Right.
Before, when you're in a band, everyone had their own tonality.
You had to create it.
You had to create it. Now there's nothing to create. Oh, I just want to sound like I don't know. Give me the horn part to I don't know. Take your pick. Tower of Power.
Right.
And now you sound like Tower of Power. But there's no individuality anymore. Everything just sounds, well, it's taken away a lot from music. And I don't think it's ever going to come back. I think we're just stuck.
No, it won't. And just look at the wide range of artists we've already talked about.
Right.
We've gone from Joni Mitchell to The Who to Chase to Carole King to the Stones. And nobody would ever confuse any of those for the other. Ever.
No, everybody's an individual. Believe it or not. You would not know that today because everybody sounds the same.
Right.
And for some reason, that's what they push and that's what they want. But hey, it's those kids. That's what they want, But whatever. It's boring. I'm an old man. No one cares. But thank God we got to listen to music when music was real. I mean, I think a lot of this had to have started in the 80s, though. Because think about a lot of those 80s tracks, a lot of Yamaha DX7 on things. Everything started to get real homogenized in the 80s. Right. I mean, not everything. But, man, it sure makes you appreciate pre-1980 a lot more,
Right.
All right.
I'm going to go listen to that track as soon as we're done.
You should.
The drumming.
I might listen to it tonight when I go to bed.
The drumming's just stupid on that.
But that's another one of those tracks, Peter, that I just going, well, I have to put Hocus Pocus on here.
Right.
I just can't.
How can I leave it off?
Is it as good as A Case of You? I would say it's probably not. But it is. But in its own way, it's just great. You'll never see that now.
It's in its own lane.
It's in its own lane.
We're not worried about this. We're not
Mhm.
worried about them doing that. They're all in their own lane. We
Everybody-
get to go back and forth and choose what lane we want to go in.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
Great choice.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. What you got?
Next one, legacy band for me. Probably my favorite band of all time. The influences of this band are phone book worthy. I'm going to jump to the title track of the second regular studio hard rock version of Mark II of Deep Purple and the opening track, Fireball.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. When I first heard this, first of all, I had never heard a double bass onslaught like that. It was just relentless. It was in the beat and it was just driving with this unrelenting guitar part with Ian Gillan just wailing over the top of it. And the great story is that it ties in with one of my earlier picks. They were in the studio recording. The Who had been in there a day or two before. Keith Moon's bass drum was sitting over in the corner. Ian Pace tried to play it with one foot. Now, Ian Pace's foot is like lightning, but he said it had no power. So he said, oh, the bass drum's over there. He just moved his hi-hat over, put the other bass drum, and off he goes. And you're like, and it's the only double bass track in Purple's catalog.
Wonder why he never incorporated that into his regular set.
Well, because his foot was pretty quick as it was, and that really wasn't their thing. Although Purple probably led into speed metal and stuff later, of course, with Speed King and now here with Fireball,
of course.
But this was just a track that just seeped right into my DNA, and I was like, okay, this is a keeper, and it just put my appreciation for Deep Purple up to a level that has never fallen out of that top slot. So, Fireball.
Excellent. All right. Great choice. All right. My next choice is a 12-minute track off their 5th studio album, and I'm going to go The Low Spark of High-Heeled Boys from Traffic, which I would have to admit is probably my favorite. Is that my favorite track? I like John Barleycorn Must Dive. I might like Low Spark of High-Heeled Boys. Might be my favorite Traffic album. But, oh my God, the musicianship. Holy crap, the playing on this. And the riff of just Low Spark of High-Heeled Boys and Winwood's vocal. Oh my God. It's just, I don't know. Great.
That's
FM
powerful
rock,
stuff.
AOR radio staple. Back in the day, they used to play that whole long version. No more, they don't. But yeah, Traffic, Low Spark of High-Heeled Boys. I love it. That's another one that would be on this list. I didn't have to think about it.
Well, and look at the length of some of these tracks we're talking about.
I know. Yeah.
I mean, that one, Heart of the Sunrise, and Tarkus takes up a bloody whole side. So it's experimentation, it's freedom, it's not being hounded by maybe they were being hounded by record execs, who knows, or they probably just ignored them.
Well, I don't know,
and it really doesn't matter because it came out regardless, but it just shows a height of creativity that is just so missing right now. It's just nobody would ever think of doing anything that long today.
I do want to mention, I know we're not in the CD era anymore, kids, but those remasters, those Traffic remasters that came out, I don't know, the last batch, holy crap, those CDs sound good. Highly recommend them. They probably sound better than the records, But,
excellent.
But there you go. It's all about giving tips here on this program, children. So, yeah, Traffic, Low Spark of High-Heeled Boys. What you got next, Peter?
We're going to go more to the pop, the AM side of things with a band that when you go back and start making the list of songs that you forget about where they charted, that you just remember, it's pretty staggering. And this is a band that didn't have just a great lead singer.
Mhm.
It didn't have just two great lead singers. It had three.
Three. And I don't know who you're talking about, but I'm trying to think.
Three Dog Night.
Three Dog Night. Look at you.
And
All
I'm
right.
going with the album Harmony.
Mhm.
And I'm just going to take 1 second to say rest in peace to drummer Floyd Sneed, who passed away a couple weeks ago. His drumming is all over these tracks. And this is a band that just absolutely exploded into my world when I started to hear them. And I could have picked a lot from just this album, Harmony, but I'm going with the track Family of Man.
Oh.
And what I love about this is that all three singers take a verse, and you get that Hammond, that great up backbeat, almost like a disco feel that Floyd was playing. And it is all about the voices and the melodies and the harmonies and perfect power pop. This band was so stunningly good, and Family of Man has always stood out for the versatility. Again, if I only have to play one track to somebody and that explains how great all three singers were, this is it. I could listen to this band forever. And, a lot of people live on the surface with all of the hits, but man, they've got a whole big discography of inner tracks that are really, really well done. So this is just a tremendous band. Three Dog Night from the album Harmony, 1971, and the song Family of Man.
Beautiful. I did not. Well, yeah, I knew you liked Three Dog Night. I should have, I'm not surprised. Harmony, hey, I love it. Keep it real, Peter. Keep it real. All right. Now you mentioned Yes before. I'm going to pick Yes, but I'm picking a different record. The Yes album, and I'm going to go there. I could have picked any number of tracks off of this, of course, but we're going to go with Yours Is No Disgrace.
Right.
And the fact that the reason I picked this as a young boy, 13, 14, love Paul McCartney, love Geddy Lee, love Chris Squire. Holy crap. The bass parts on this record are absolutely killer. And especially on Yours Is No Disgrace. Me as a wee lad, I was just, holy mackerel.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Of course, think of that band. You got Bill Bruford playing drums, Tony Kaye playing keyboards. I mean, well, of course, yes, Steve Howe. They were a machine. This is their third record. We just got Steve Howe on board. But oh my gosh. This is when everything started to click. Obviously, the first two albums are fine. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with them. But I think, once you got Steve Howe in the band, that's where everything gelled. And on Yours Is No Disgrace, I think that's a good example of Yes in their prime and them firing on all cylinders. So,
well, it's what led to everything after it.
Of course, yeah, they finally figured out the formula.
It's so essential.
Right.
Because it's almost like an awakening. It's and we'll get to another band that in a minute that kind of went through the same machinations. And and that album is so seminal because you can say, well, that's when they became Yes.
Yes. And that's it. That record was it. Fragile just even solidified it. Right. Of course they kept going. But, if you really think about it, I don't know. This sounds like a Yes topic. But the Yes album and Fragile, well, Close to the Edge is pretty damn great, but they're starting to get more adventurous,
But
But I
Fragile
think
doesn't happen without the predecessor.
no, you would not have it.
Mm-mm.
So
it's got to get its props.
and I figured, yes, the S album had to be mentioned for 1971.
Absolutely.
So there you
Perfect
go.
choice.
All righty, what you got?
All right. Number 2. Normally he would be in the number 1 slot. And just like last episode, he got to the number 2 slot and couldn't break the top, but that doesn't diminish my love for him. So I've got to go with my man, Tom Jones.
Oh,
And he's singing She's a Lady.
okay.
And I believe this was written by Paul Anka, if I recall. I think it was. We'll correct it in the comments.
If we only have a way to look it up.
But I think Paul Anka wrote that.
Look. Paul Anka, yes, Paul Anka wrote it.
This was part of the duo of albums that I got in 70 and 71 that absolutely took me down the Tom Jones rabbit hole that I've never left. Every track on here is great. This is clearly more in the rock vein. There's less strings in this song, even though there are big sweeping string arrangements in other tracks on this record. This is a more stripped down guitar, bass, drums, and it fit right in. And he was just as popular as he was singing What's New Pussycat and Delilah and things like that many years earlier. And so Tom's always going to be up there. She's a Lady. There were a couple other tracks I could have picked on here, but this for me is absolutely essential. 1971 listening from my man, Tom.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. You know, I was going through records today, and I do have a Tom Jones, the Caesar Palace record.
Yes.
Where he's, what a great record.
The version of Resurrection Shuffle on there is just absolutely.
And the album cover is almost as good as the music. Almost. It's that great. Everyone should have that record in their collection. Check out Tom Jones at Caesar Palace. I'm just telling you.
The banter between the songs is just as good.
Yeah, it's classic. You could not produce that record today. No, you couldn't. All right, excellent choice, Peter. I'm going to go with something we had in our 1970 discussion. Well, it's a different track. We're in a different year, but it's a song written by Roger Nichols and Paul Williams. Rainy Days and Mondays by the Carpenters.
Right.
This song, 1971, they're backed by the Wrecking Crew on this track. It went to number 2 on the Hot 100 chart, Billboard. What can I say? It's one of Paul Williams, Roger Nichols' best tracks. One of the best songs they ever wrote. And Karen Carpenter's vocal on here is just, well, what can you say? It's just like the angels are coming down and singing to you.
Right.
The B-side was the single Saturday, written
Saturday, I think so, yeah.
Richard Carpenter. But side A, even though Richard didn't write it, Rainy Days and Mondays. What can I say?
Incredible.
So
Absolutely.
that's my, God, I could have picked there's so many other Carpenters tracks from 1971 that were singles that you could easily pick. But I think that Rainy Days and Mondays probably their best single from 71. I could be wrong, but for me, I think it is. All right, Peter,
right.
we have to be getting close.
Number 1.
All right.
Before I reveal my number 1 pick, I'm going to throw myself at the mercy of the court and throw out a stipulation that goes beyond rankings for me. And it's a nice dovetail from what you just said. I don't include this in lists. It's its list by itself. It's not ever included in rankings or anything like this. I just say this, and I say it as fact from what I believe, and then I'll give my number one pick. From that same record, I believe, and I will throw this out there, people have fun with it, whatever you want to do with it. I will say that this might be the greatest single of all time. It is clearly my favorite track of the entire 70s. Also by the Carpenters, and I'm picking the tracks, and I'm picking the track Superstar.
Yeah, that was a single following this one, yeah.
I've never been moved more, even to this day, all these decades later, by a single performance as I am when she sings this. It just goes right through you like you are so transparent. It is to me what the definition of pure art and pure emotion, pure sentiment has to be. And it's the rarest type of thing to ever find in the universe. It was just so perfect, so untouchable. If this was on endless repeat for the rest of my life, I would never get tired of it. Ever. So I'm just putting it where it can't be touched. It's just right there. Thank you for indulging me on that. Now, my pick for this list goes back to what we were talking about, yes, and how bands had to progress. And what came before and what came after matter. And I've been giving it away the entire show because I'm wearing my brand new Pink Floyd Live at Pompeii shirt. And I'm going with the album Metal, and I'm going with the track Echoes from Pink Floyd. I think this is the most essential track in their entire catalog. It is the bridge between the psychedelic through the soundtrack era into what became Dark Side of the Moon. If there's no Echoes, everything that comes after is different.
I would say that it would be the blueprint.
And
think about it. You wouldn't have Dark Side if you didn't have Echoes.
That's what I'm saying.
You wouldn't.
And for me, the live performance that was captured on Pompeii of Echoes is the seminal version. It can never be touched. Never. Even, when David did it later with Richard, and no, it cannot touch what happened at Pompeii.
What about the studio version, though?
I love the studio version. And it was my essential until I heard Pompeii.
Oh, I'll be darned.
Yeah.
I've never heard the Pompeii one, to be honest.
It is so emotionally moving and so brilliantly done. The notion of filming a band with its entire sound system in the middle of the ruins of Pompeii, no audience, nothing. Why that has never been released as a standalone soundtrack album is beyond all comprehension. It may be one of... I know that Floyd fans would just fall over themselves to be able to have a fully legitimate, well-produced soundtrack without having to go to the DVD to watch it broken up with the snippets in between it of making of Dark Side and other things that are in there. There's other tracks on here. It's also got One of These Days on Metal, which is an essential Floyd track. It starts to show the anger, and it's got foreshadowing of tracks that would show up on Animals and things like that. It's got that edge to it, that aggression, and the soft acoustic stuff that was in it. Saint Tropez and other things that are on that record. But Echoes is absolutely essential. And this just, I don't even know what else. I sound like an idiot now. I'm just blabbering.
No, no,
because it's just such an important track.
Mm-hmm.
And the improvisation section and the breakdown and the return to the themes and those sweeping harmonies and the dual leads between him and Richard are just amazing. So my top pick for 71 is Pink Floyd's Metal and the track Echoes.
Wow. Well said.
Thank you.
Great track. I almost included it. Almost. But I didn't.
But you're never going to find that on the Billboard 100.
No.
So
No.
that's why we have to spread out a little bit here.
Yeah. Well, this next one, like I said, I don't know if I would call this my number one, but I do think that this track is essential. And I think it might be the greatest track from this band ever. Could this track be overplayed? Well, kids, it's probably overplayed. And do I really ever have to hear it again? It's probably burned into my memory like you wouldn't believe. But 1971, people say this is the greatest Who album ever made. Who's next? It could be. It's a failed concept album, It's the failed Lifehouse album. If Pete Townshend was able to produce it. But even though the tracks on this record are incredible, and I have to admit, even though I may never have to hear this song again, I think it has to be possibly one of the greatest Who anthems ever created, and it has to be Won't Get Fooled Again.
There you go.
I mean, like I said, I don't ever have to hear it again. But when I think 1971 and greatness, you know what? We didn't even choose really anything from Led Zeppelin either.
I do have a couple of small honorable mentions.
Yeah, you could do that. But you think we'd say we just can't include everything.
No, you can't.
Even though I might think Rock and Roll or Black Dog, they might pop into my head, but I was always a much bigger Who fan than I ever was of Led Zeppelin. I can appreciate Led Zeppelin more now than I could when I was younger. Believe me, I get how great they were. I'm good. But to me, I was always a Who guy. So, but I think Won't Get Fooled Again, whether you're tired of hearing it. God, when it would come out over the radio, the power, the production, the Who never sounded like this before. We always had Kit Lambert doing production. They always sounded a bit questionable. But man, you got Glenn Johns in here producing. Holy mackerel. The Who right here, this is the mighty Who, kids, and this is a mighty track. And I think you have, for 1971, you have to mention Won't Get Fooled Again. So that's my
one
choice.
of my favorite drumming moments of all time.
Right.
Is the first time the band I was in was rehearsing this, and I did the 3 drum fills before the scream. I almost couldn't even play. I was so overwhelmed with emotion because it was so powerful. I'm like, am I really doing this? And our singer could nail the scream, and it's maybe one of the great moments in all of rock and roll.
Yeah.
That scream, and of course the big jump and the kneel from The Kids Are All Right when you watch them do that. And then this immediate line, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. You're like,
which is, it hits home. Perfect. Everybody listening to that record go, holy crap, I can identify with this band.
Right.
They hit it out of the park. And that's why, this whole album, they hit it out of the park.
Yeah, it's my favorite studio record of theirs by far.
My favorite studio record is Sellout.
Can't go wrong there either. Can't go wrong.
I mean, it's a failed concept album, but man, what a great concept album.
Okay, fire off just a real quick couple of
Yeah,
honorable
go
mentions.
ahead. Sure.
And
Okay.
and I think, again, trying to be diplomatic because I do live in both worlds so intensely. I live in that radio world, and then I live in the more artist LP world, and those that influenced me as a musician, those that I loved as a listener. Sometimes they crossed over. If I had gone strictly more into what I probably listen to more today, you're going to see more of these bands and these choices in it. I have to mention Master of Reality from Black Sabbath and the track Children of the Grave. That changed everything for me. I had never heard anything.
Or Sweet Leaf.
Oh, yeah.
See, there's so many. You could do a 2-parter of this and
Yeah.
still not hit all the
Then,
essentials from 1971.
then the start of a trio of records that I think few bands have ever hit as high mark with. Uriah Heep's "Look at Yourself" in the title track. Look at Yourself. Absolutely amazing. We talk about Zeppelin, and for me, the ultimate track on 4 will always be When the Levee Breaks. I don't care how many times I've heard it. I don't care how many times the drum part's been sampled. I don't care how many stupid posts on YouTube with people trying to go, here's how you recreate the drum part that Bonham played. No, you want to sound like Bonham? Be Bonham. There, thanks. I just saved you 30 minutes of your silly podcast. Go away. You can get the gear. Is anyways, sounded like Bonham because it was Bonham.
Another good example.
He was it. He was it.
He could have played anything.
He could have.
And
he could have
still sound the same.
Put a bunch of pots and pans up there. He would have sounded great.
Oh, that's John Bonham.
Yeah. And then my last one is one of the really great pop tracks. And I absolutely loved this band. And in maybe another episode in earlier years, we may get in something more specific. But this one, I think this band is so overlooked now. Nobody talks about him on any level at all. I absolutely love me some Tommy James and the Shondale, and I love Dragging the Line.
That's a great single.
Find a better melody or chorus than that.
Yeah. Catchy, memorable.
Yeah. So those are just
no one talks about that, but no one talks about Uriah Heep either.
No. Those are just a couple honorable mentions. So
yeah, Uriah Heep doesn't get any airplay at all. Well, either does Tommy James.
Well, Uriah Heep,
Oldie Station, yeah.
They get Stealin'. They play Stealin' is the only one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that was kind of past their heyday.
Yeah, when I was in high school, no one even Uriah Heep.
No.
They were, 83, 82. Nah, passe.
Mm-hmm.
No one even knew who Uriah Heep was at my high school.
No, they were peaking by Demons and Magician's Birthday.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not trying to take anything away from them, but
they were a tremendous band.
Yeah, it's like Grand Funk, who were on gigantic, but by early 80s, no one even knew who they were anymore.
No,
they sold out Shea Stadium. Well, no,
faster than the Beatles, yeah. And that's what goes back to what we were talking about on your AOR show. It's funneled down, and now we're an American band or nothing. That's it. You don't hear I'm your captain.
Which you would think you would.
God, what a song. Holy crap, what a song.
It doesn't even sound like. I'm not a Grand Funk guy. I really despise Grand Funk. I'm one of those people. But I'm Your Captain's great, and We're American Band's great.
Yeah.
I have to admit. But I like Don Brewer's vocals. Jeez, I wish he'd sing more.
Yeah, me too.
And Todd Rundgren was able to go, oh, that's the guy who's got to sing it.
Right.
I mean, brilliant. He knew who should have sang that. And he was totally right. All right, kids. Well, there you go. We've done it.
What a great collection of tunes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the thing is that you could put a composite of our picks and they would all work together. You could listen to them all in just whatever order, and you'd be like, okay, this works.
Oh yeah, you could put a compilation together and it would work.
Yeah, you don't have to separate out the Carly Simon from the Sabbath.
No,
just
not
listen
really.
to it. No, you just listen to it. Because good is good.
Good is good. Yeah, good is good. And I do want to bring this up while I have you here, is that I finally get it.
Wow.
This is a great record.
It's my favorite.
And I never understood Iron Maiden, but all of a sudden it clicked. So now I'm starting to get it. But these guys are way different than anybody else.
Yeah.
I feel like I just discovered something. But this is not your normal heavy metal band.
Mm-mm.
And you're probably going, oh, Grant, Grant, right?
Look, even lumping them in that new Wabam thing is even almost kind of insulting, because none of those other new Wabam bands sounded even remotely like Iron Maiden. Not even close.
Right. Yeah.
But that's the end of that era.
Yeah.
Second album, and it's a different direction with Bruce.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But whatever, I'm discovering it. But I do have, I know this is going on a tangent, but I do have this.
I love that album too. Great version too. You got the Jap?
Yeah, I got the Past Masters.
Past Masters ones, yeah.
Yeah, you don't mess around, because this is like the first Capital. This one's a Capital.
Right.
You don't get the new ones. They're all jacked up. These have dynamic range and aren't all futzed with. You just get the original versions. Don't mess with anything else, because the remasters are jacked up.
It's like that great quote from Martin Birch when he was mixing Deep Purple's Machine Head. He said the band was always over his shoulder, moving faders. And they go, oh, wait, I got to move this guy. Wait, I got to move this guy. And all this thing, next thing you know, all the faders were all the way up. And Martin would go, I want everything louder than everything else.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That would kind of describe some of those mixing processes.
Yes.
I want everything louder than everything else.
Yeah, I hear it. All right. Well, I'm going to have to make an edit. Shit. I got another show to go to. All right. Peter Jones. Another episode in the can. 1971. So I'd recommend anybody to check out these tracks. Recommend it to anybody.
That's right.
So next month,
give us your lists too.
Give us your lists. Well, we had lists before. People like this show. But next month, we'll have to send you some dates out. But we're going to be doing 1972.
72. Just as difficult.
Just as difficult a task. So, all right. Well, I want to thank you for coming on, and
thanks for having me.
It's been enjoyable.
Pleasure's mine.
3 Dog Night. You might have some 3 Dog Night in the next one. You never know.
It's got a few more years that it's eligible. Yeah, absolutely.
That's right. All right, Peter, I appreciate it. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Leave a comment, subscribe, hit the button. You know what to do. It's not your first rodeo. So anyway, thanks for coming on, Peter. We'll see you on the next one, and I'll be in contact to send some dates out.
All right, sir.
All right. Thanks a lot.